Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Heartbeat, your daily Inter Miami podcast. As always, I'm your host, Scotty Grays, and today we're talking about the 5 things that we learned in last night's win against Toronto FC. It was a great way to bounce back after our previous loss to Cincinnati. Julian Gressel continued to play really well. Diego Gómez had a great game. Federico Redondo was a standout. Yannick Bright was good. Drake Callender made some really big saves. Luis Suarez came back. Matías Rojas came back. Jordi Alba returned after a short suspension. Toto Aviles looks healthy after missing the last game with a little bit of an injury. And so this team firing on all cylinders in a way that you got to feel really good about if you're Inter Miami, and especially if you're an Inter Miami fan. We played a below average team, I think, last night in Toronto. They have a couple good players, but they're a team that's going to be fighting for a playoff spot. They need some real work to create a team that's really going to compete in the East. And so what do you want to do when you host a team like that? You want to go beat them up. And that's exactly what Inter Miami did. Took a 3-0 lead at one point, ends up winning 3-1, but ultimately not a particularly close game. And we're going to talk about it here. Number one, Federico Redondo is not a young Busquets. We saw the highlight of why people want to make him the quote-unquote next Busquets. In the first half, 43rd minute, Federico Redondo puts a nice ball up from deep beyond the back line for Diego Gómez to run under, and then Gómez smashed it in for the opening goal for Inter Miami. And so you see that and you think, oh, he's really good playing deep. He can make those, he can spray it around. This is a true deep line playmaker. But that's not what Federico Redondo is. And aside from that one particular moment, he was great in this game because he wasn't playing in those spaces. Again, I get why you see the Busquets comparison if you just look at the highlight reel. He does have good footwork in tight spaces. He is tall and lanky like Busquets. And as we saw with that pass, he can make that pass. Granted, I think this might be the first one we've seen all season of him doing that. But if you're just watching a quick highlight reel, you can see why you would get that comparison. But the truth is, we learned last night, Federico Redondo needs to be playing much higher up the pitch. And not to be negative about an incredible performance, but his positioning when we get into our own third is questionable. And he's not great in defensive transitions, but ultimately he is very good in a lot of other ways that are maximized higher up the pitch. He's really good in transition. He's good at pressing high up the pitch and creating turnovers and forcing chaos. As we saw last night, he can make a late run into the box, and he can score a set piece, which shouldn't be a surprise because he's a really big physical body. But this is what Federico Redondo is going to be best at. He's also very good when the midfield breaks down. When there's a lot of space, he's rangy and athletic and can put the ball forward and then follow those up with those runs into dangerous areas. This is what Redondo should be. The idea that he's a number 6 that you can just leave back there and have him spray the ball around and hold up in transition defensively, that's not how we're going to maximize Federico Redondo. Not now, not yet. Maybe he will grow into that as his career evolves, but at this moment, he's much better higher up the field. And as we saw last night, he can be really effective. 2 goals, an assist, really good defensively, caused a few turnovers in the opponent's half. Really, really good performance. But this is what Redondo needs to be. We need to move on from this label of he's the next Sergio Busquets. He's a young Busquets. He's not. He's a guy that needs to be playing higher up the pitch. And ultimately, if you want to get the best out of him, you need to have a true number 6, a true holding midfielder behind him to protect him in some of the ways that he's a little weak, especially defensively. So really good player. His best performance as a Heron came last night, no doubt about that. But ultimately, this is what this player is, and this is what he needs to be. And I'll talk about Diego Gómez, but as we have players in and out of the lineup because of the Olympics, because of transfers, being confident in Federico Redondo as that 8 that can play higher up the field, I think is going to be hugely important for Inter Miami. We just have to embrace that that's what he is. Number 2, and not to be negative about a 3-1 win last night, and it was a good, important win, but let's get the negative out of the way. And I want to talk about Matías Rojas. He did not operate well in a very congested midfield last night, especially in the first 30 to 40 minutes of the game. And he was much better in the second half. And so, what do we learn from that? This is a player that is really good when he has time and space on the ball. He's really good in transition when there is time and space in front of him. But when it's congested, he's not quite that effective. He was relatively invisible in that first half, really struggled to get on the ball. And when he did, it was mostly just to be an outlet and then pass it back to the defense to sort of recycle play. Really unable to get on the ball going forward in any meaningful way. And for a creative player like Matías Rojas is, or at least with what we expect from him, you would have expected him to try and get on the ball and turn upfield and make plays happen going forward. And instead, it was Julian Gressel that was coming back into the midfield, trying to put balls forward, but there was really no one in front of him. At one point, I thought it made sense to switch Gressel and Matías Rojas so that Gressel would have another outlet in front of him and that Matías Rojas would be a little bit higher up the pitch in order to be a bit more dangerous. In the second half, the game really opened up. And so that gave Rojas the time and space. And especially after we scored our second goal, Toronto eased up defensively and tried to really push numbers forward to create something in that game to get a result. And when they do that, they leave themselves exposed. And that's when Matías Rojas really operates well. So he was fine in the second half, but it was under the circumstances that you would expect him to be good in. But when it was congested in the midfield and the game was even, and perhaps even Toronto looked slightly better in those first 30 plus minutes, Rojas wasn't the difference maker that you would have wanted or expected him to be. So that was disappointing. And I know we've seen him play really well in the midfield, but I'm curious if we've seen him play, and I don't think we have seen him play well in the midfield without Lionel Messi on the field. One of the things that Messi provides is that he's so dangerous and he's so good and he's so clever that the back line of the opposing team tends to play very deep, and he gives you that space in front of the back line to operate. And so when Messi is on the field, Matías Rojas also is given that space to operate in a really free and effective way. But when Messi's not on the field, those back lines play way higher up. They're not that afraid of our team speed, especially when Diego Gómez isn't in the lineup, or at least on the front line. And so it becomes much more difficult for Matías Rojas to operate. And listen, we've seen great number 10s in this league. Guys like Thiago Almada and Lucho Acosta can make plays regardless of, what the defense is doing. Matías Rojas hasn't shown us that yet. And so I'm interested in seeing if he can be more effective in a more advanced role, not playing as sort of a dual 8, but in playing a little bit higher up the field and maybe put someone else in the midfield. We're going to lose Diego Gómez here for the Olympics. And so maybe putting Matías Rojas in the front line as a left winger would be an effective way to try and get the most out of him. I still think this is a player that you can see the talent, you can see the potential, but how do we maximize this player? How does he fit in? I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. And listen, sometimes it takes time. We saw Julian Gressel play in that midfield time and time again, and it was getting frustrating as a fan to watch it. And then we move him over to right wing and give him a run of games, and he's been excellent. So it's just about finding this player's the right spot for him, the right fit for him in this team, and moving on from there, because he is a talented player. And if Inter Miami can figure out how to best use him, we'll be in a lot better shape. Number 3, this team plays much more aggressively when they have an athletic back line. We saw 2 weeks ago, 12 days ago, that Against Cincinnati, we didn't have our most athletic back line. It was Kristoff and Busquets as a center back, which is probably the slowest, least athletic center back partnership we've ever had. And then we also had Franco Negri and Cello Weekend at the fullback spot. So the entire back line was a step down athletically from what we saw last night. Ian Fray goes in a right back. Jordi Alba goes in a left back. Toto Aviles returns to the lineup, and Kristoff gets the start. But once Kristoff goes out in the 35th minute, Noah Allen comes on. And so your back line is Allen, Alba, Aviles, and Ian Fray. And it's a much more athletic back line, possibly the most athletic back line we've had all season. And I thought the team played a lot more aggressive and a lot freer when they had Noah Allen in the game. They felt, especially the midfield, like they could get a little bit higher up the pitch. They didn't have to do so much defensively. And I wonder what the psyche of the team is when you know that your back line can play a little bit higher up and they can recover. You don't have so much pressure to be up in passers' faces in order to prevent those long balls over the top. And then defensively, you don't have to give so much cushion because you know you have the recovery speed. Noah Allen is a very inexperienced center back. He came up as a left back. And so I'm not suggesting Noah Allen should go into the starting lineup, but I did think it was very interesting to see how Inter Miami changed their style of play and how they were a little bit more aggressive, playing a little bit higher up the pitch once Noah Allen came on. And that brings me to David Martinez, who is reportedly going to be Inter Miami's new signing. The window opens today, so that could become official as early as today. But ultimately, I'm curious if Martinez is going to be the type of player that can come in and provide that level of athleticism that we saw from Noah Allen last night, that made us a lot more confident and gave us the athleticism on the back line that made us feel good about going higher up the pitch. And also when we needed to spread the team out, we did it very effectively. So I'm really excited for David Martinez. I want to see what he looks like, but I thought it was really interesting that the team played a lot looser, a lot more free, and a lot more aggressive when Noah Allen came on in the 35th minute for Sergei Kristoff. Number 4, Ian Fray is taking the right steps. He played 102 minutes last night, went the full game, 102 being the 90 plus 5 minutes extra in the first half and 7 in the second half. But he went the full 90 last night for the first time. He hadn't even gone 70 minutes yet this season. And so it was an incredible step forward for Ian Fray. He's a guy that we have to put kid gloves on because we want to make sure that he stays healthy and that he doesn't have any more setbacks or any more injuries. But ultimately, he wants to be a professional soccer player, and that means being able to play 90 minutes when called upon. And so is he going to play Saturday night? I doubt it. But getting him back into the lineup and seeing him play a full game was really good to see. And he looked dynamic. He looked good on the ball. He gets forward. He's got an aggressiveness to his game, and he's a good dribbler, and he can make guys miss. And remember, this is a player that's really a center back playing right back. So the tools are off the charts. The question mark with him has always been defensively. He's inexperienced, to put it, lightly. And so he was partially at fault for the goal in the latter stages of the game. He kind of loses his mark, right? He's a fullback and he comes too far across and someone makes the run in behind him. But ultimately, it was a really positive step for Ian Fray. And considering the goal didn't really cost Inter Miami, it was nothing I can't forgive. This player just crossed last night 1,000 career minutes. And so keeping that in mind, this is a player that is prone to make defensive mistakes, but the talent and the upside is so great that you just got to play him whenever he's available. One thing I did want to say about Ian Fray is that, again, he just hit the 1,000 career minute mark, but he did lose a little bit of concentration, I think, in the last 20 minutes or so. And again, I think this was just fatigue. He hadn't played 70 minutes in a game all season, either in his recovery games with the B team or so far with the A team. And so he did get a little sloppy. He was at fault for the goal. He did have a foul that ended up in a yellow card late. That was, I think, really frustrating as a fan if it's in the 5th minute and it's Toto Avilas, but you have a little bit more grace with Ian Fray because I think he was sort of mentally exhausted, if not physically exhausted by that point in the game. So you want to see him clean that up, but considering it was his first game going a full 90, you can forgive that, and especially because it was in the last minutes of the game where he was really pushing himself. So great to see Ian Fray take that next step. You love it from him, and ultimately he's going to be a better player. And the more we see from him, the better he's going to get. And ultimately, I think Tata needs to have a serious conversation about making him the starting right back whenever he is fit and available, because he just provides so much going forward. And then number 5, Diego Gómez was an immense signing for Inter Miami, and he was once again amazing last night. He's leaving for the Olympics. This was his last game with Inter Miami before he goes to the Olympics. He's going to join the Paraguay Olympic team and hopefully do really well, and we can be very proud of whatever he accomplishes at the Olympic Games in Paris. But in a bigger way, this could have been his last game with Inter Miami. We have long heard talks about interest in Diego Gómez from the Premier League, and he talked about that after the game last night, that his agent is in conversations with Brighton. Brighton made an opening offer. Inter Miami, I think, wisely rejected it because it was too low for a player of Diego Gómez's quality. But once you get a 12, 15 plus $1 million offer, you have to let the player go. I expect that to come in for Diego Gómez over the next couple of weeks, and I expect him to sign with Brighton or some other Premier League team over the course of the month of August. Within the next month, I expect him to be not an Inter Miami player. And so if this was really the end of Diego Gómez as a Heron, I just have to say it was an amazing run. He had a banger of a goal last night. I mean, the shot was about 1.5 feet away from Sean Johnson, and if he didn't hit it like a bazooka, Johnson would have easily saved it, but he just smashed it home. This season, he only played 16 games, just over 1,200 minutes, 4 goals, 3 assists, but he created big chances on a near regular basis. He was an absolute menace in the midfield. I think he became the single best box-to-box midfielder in the league this year, at least in the minutes that he played. Absolutely dominated opposing midfielders. When we needed a winger option, he was able to step into that left wing spot and provide another facet to his game that was really helpful. Scored a couple of big goals from that left wing spot, provided speed over the top when teams were trying to creep up on us. Just an incredible player, and the incredible growth that he's had over the last year since we bought him has been nothing short of phenomenal. Listen, we signed him for $2.5 million from Libertad in Paraguay, and he's I think going to go down as the best signing Inter Miami's ever made from a talent to price standpoint. I know Gregory was a good signing, and I know that we've made some good free agent signings in terms of guys like Messi and Suarez, et cetera. But in terms of an actual transfer fee and the quality we got for it, $2.5 million for Diego Gómez was a steal. And even last night, had an assist, had a goal, gave Bernadeschi a lot of trouble, pocketed Richie Larea a couple times. Just another standout performance from Diego Gómez. And so if this is really the last time we see him as a Heron, I just want to thank you, Diego Gómez, because it was awesome to see your rise, your growth, and to see you step onto the field this year. It was a pleasure. So good luck at the Olympics. And if this is adieu, good luck with your future, because you've been awesome for Inter Miami, and I'm sure you'll be awesome for your next team. All right, guys, that was 5 things we learned against Toronto FC. As always, I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.